I had this most delicious avocado toast in a restaurant today, Hasita. I must take you there. But I just keep wondering, like, why can't I make this stuff at home? I mean, it's simple, right? You just scoop out the fruit and you add a little salt and some chopped onions, and I should have the same guacamole, but
And
it just doesn't taste the same. I mean, I buy it online and they look green on big basket, and I don't know.
they look green. Yeah. No, I genuinely think that the people who supply to restaurants and larger outlets and the stuff that we buy online is probably vastly different, Subha. And it's quite interesting you mentioned avocados because the guest that we have today has done something phenomenal. He's figured out how to sell coffee, how to sell avocados, and how to really sell the estate dream in a way, primarily using Instagram as a channel. So let's find out a bit more, I think.
Oh wow, I'm already in awe if somebody is able to grow their business through Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we have a ton of questions for this person. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the Damn Good Marketing Podcast. Today, Subha and I discuss two of our favorite things, food and social media. We have with us today Pranoy Tipaya, Managing Partner at Kere Haklu. Now, if you're not familiar with Kere Haklu, what are you doing? Please go give them a follow on Instagram. Their Instagram handle is in the show notes. And just give them 2 days, guys, and they'll sell you. They'll sell you on the idea of good specialty coffee. They'll educate you. They'll entertain you. And more than anything, I think they've really mastered the art of the two-way conversation on a platform like Instagram. So let's find out from Pranoy how to achieve this unicorn status of organic growth, especially when Instagram keeps changing its algorithm every single day.
Yes, we must. I mean, if you can get away without singing and dancing and grow your business, I'm all ears.
Oh, I swear to God, there is no singing and dancing on this account at all. You just have to see it to believe it.
So like you said, I'm just so happy to talk about our two favorite things. And Pranoy, we're happy to have you here because our two favorite things are coffee and social media. And you bring it together for us today.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be here.
For the uninitiated, a little bit of context. So apart from being the managing partner for Kere Haklu, Pranay also is a brand consultant for music albums, producers and bands. And I think the thing that really catches me a little by surprise here is that Pranoy has two public accounts on Instagram. Both of them dealing, one of them is obviously for Kere Haklu and one for himself. And both of them seem to be doing pretty well by the looks of it. So Pranoy, how do you even keep at it, given that Instagram has this tendency to keep changing things overnight, to keep, putting people in a bit of a tough spot in terms of, hey, today we are doing reels, tomorrow we are doing stories, the day after maybe we exist or we don't. So how do you just keep at it for so long?
I think it comes from having a vision of what you want to put out. It depends on the story that you want to tell, and there's multiple avenues of telling that story. At least that's how I look at it. And so, like you mentioned with Kere Haklu, it's very much, even that journey has sort of evolved over the course of 4 years, digitally or virtually. And now personally, working with music festivals and sort of in the event space, that is a very recent venture almost in comparison. But yeah, it's not that I hadn't been active on it. I've just been a bit more on like a private profile kind of thing. But so yeah, it's just finding something which I think is a niche or a vision which maybe is lacking, or something that is already there which you can improve upon, and yeah, just going at it again and again and again.
Speaking of keeping at it, particularly in the context of Kere Haklu, you're also trying to do two very different things, right? You're growing a business and you're also building a brand. While they do run parallelly, they're not one and the same thing. So do you also invest in maybe some amount of paid effort or paid push, or is it just organic? And what's your rationale either way for doing that?
It's been completely organic.
Wow. Okay. Just give us a minute to recover from that. Okay, go on.
Not a single paid post or story or back in the Facebook days, Facebook posts also, or the Meta posts, I guess. I don't even open Facebook on it. I haven't opened Facebook as with Kerry Aklu on my private account in about 2-3 years, more or less.
Okay.
I found that when I entered starting to document and put out what I did, Instagram was just taking off, or already had taken off, but I saw Facebook dying out. Like, I didn't find any value there, and I didn't find the right kind of creatives in those circles. And so I thought I would be limiting myself, or maybe even shooting myself in the foot, if I'm putting that much effort into a dying website, as opposed to something which, even at the time, I remember there were no stories. You could only post like square photos. I remember you couldn't do.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because another medium that we aren't on so much, but a lot of people find traction is Twitter. And I guess, was it that, you have such visual content that Twitter never really made sense? Like, how is that choice between Twitter and, let's say, I get that Facebook is starting to die down, but how do you choose? Do you never go for something like Twitter if you've got visual content?
So actually, I created a Twitter account during the lockdown. I think either last year, 2021. It's not like, literally, I've done like 5-6 tweets and retweets. Things. And this is just like a handful of followers. My dad is actually very active on Twitter, and recently I have been as well, because I follow it for mycology, football. A lot of my other interests come from there, and the sort of information that goes into it. But yeah, exactly, you hit the nail on the head, where I wanted a visual engagement. So when I started working there full time, and I say that in air quotes because I don't know what full time is anymore, but I found that a lot of things were blowing my mind. I was like, wow, something as simple as an elderly lady who works for us called Lakshmama, winnowing some pepper to someone else, sort of, I don't know, climbing a tree and chopping the branches off. I just found it so interesting to myself. And so that has been the sort of philosophy where, like, I am learning or I am seeing, why don't you learn with me?
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's the core mandate that really ties so much of that Instagram account together as well, because you've done Ask Me Anything sessions over an entire weekend, where you've answered pretty much every question under the sun about coffee. And even within the ecosystem of Kere Haklu, you have estate stays, which is core hospitality. Then you have coffee, which again is it's a very different ball game compared to selling a lot of other produce. And then you have avocados, of course, some of which are, breaking world records for being as big as they are. So in that context, how taxing do you really find? Because this is a full-time job in itself, right? And then being a creator on Instagram is, again, something that takes a lot of time. Are there days when you just don't want to do something on Instagram? And if so, do you do it? Do you not? Like, do you be in servitude of the algorithm, or do you just go with the flow?
So it's funny, because in the last 6 months, my answer to that question has changed a lot. Like, now, if I open my Kere Haklu DMs, in the message request section, there's about 50-60 unopened messages. And it's unfortunate, because I shouldn't be doing that. It's people legitimately asking, hey, how can I get the avocados? Or hey, how can I book a cabin to stay? But it reached a point for me, because it's so personal and my voice behind it, that I was like, hey, I'm going to do it when I want to do it. And I was under no obligation. I felt no obligation of, hey, you know what, I have to reply, or I have to put this up, where I used to, for sure. There's no doubt about it, where maybe before December, so maybe just over 6 months ago now, I felt the need to post at least twice a week, like you mentioned, to be a part, at least one of the mainstays in the algorithm, to be in people's minds, more or less, But then also, it's a fine line between quality and quantity. I've never ever made you have to post every day to be in people's minds, where it would compromise on the quality. And so that's where I'm at now. But I do think, in the time that, the 4 years that it's been having Instagram in particular, and that's something I've analyzed a lot, you do need to ride that wave of algorithms now more than ever.
Yeah.
With the reels coming in and the kind of engagement changing, if you notice, it's no longer leading. It's never a call to action which helps you. It's often like you get engagement where someone will see what you post, but it's not often they'll follow you and then go ahead very, very often will they actually go to click on your website from there. That's a small percentage. So it's about gripping these attention spans in different ways and hoping that you can convince them enough to want to be a part of it.
Yeah. In fact, this is something we've been discussing during the last episode as well, where I literally, when there's a new TV show coming out, and if it's something that I've been obsessed with for a while, then I just follow that page for the period of time during which the show is releasing, and because I want to be in on the action, and then I just go unfollow the page. So to just kind of keep up, right? And not just people's attention, but also a certain amount of interest and intention behind it over a period of time is so much harder. And in fact, this is a question that Subha wanted to ask as well. How do you feel about the whole reel situation, where I know we were flooded with everything from chartered accountants to doctors dancing to various tunes and pointing in random directions? And I understand the need for that reach, but when you know that not having it is probably a little bit harmful, how do you balance it? And also, what's the larger goal here, right? Because like you said, if people are not clicking on the website links, or if people are not going somewhere, does it still make business sense for you as a platform? Do you see it that way?
No, that's a good question. And to be honest, I have someone on board as a creative consultant, and we were just talking about it on Friday about how basically where I'm at now is I want to sort of get other perspectives on what I can put out, but still be me doing it. And so with reels, unfortunately, it could quite possibly be the death of still photography, as really sad.
True.
Especially in wildlife and in nature, that's what the large bulk of our documentation is. It's still photos. And even when you post a still photo now, you are able to put a sound on it. And sometimes I don't want to put a song or a sound, like a few words or a few sentences. And so, but that's the nature of the beast. You can't fight it. I think there still can be a sort of curated way of going about it. Like I realized that for me, I haven't done many reels, maybe but 7 or 8 over the last, 2 years, I guess. Ones have like blown up as well. Some of them done okay with a few thousand views. One hit like 100,000 or something like that, which I know now suddenly I've seen people with 1 million views in 2 days. So all meaningless numbers in certain ways, but all comparative in a sense. Even then I try to sort of weave it into the philosophy of what we do. For me, what appeals to people visually is in the coffee space is the actual brewing of the coffee, or the experience of serving it, or in maybe conservation, and also in food. It's very visual, where it's close, very interactive, where the camera is panning around, almost not really virtual reality, but you almost feel it. I think this is a good wake-up call for me, because maybe I should be posting one reel a week now.
Or not,
or not. Please stay what feels true. But you were mentioning like the kind of the death of still photography, and sometimes it feels like the death of good copy also, like, is anyone reading anything at all? Because for your kind of work, there's a story to tell, right? I mean, there's the imagery, but there's also that really shines when you then read that story about the plantation, or about what the work you're doing and the people who are doing it. A reel is an easy out, because you don't read any of the captions there. You just scroll to the next one. So how do you, what goes into what you're saying? Like, do you think about, is this compelling enough story, or do you just say it like it is, and you found an audience that enjoys that?
Yeah, that's interesting, and I completely agree. People don't read, and it could be the death of reading in a sense on social media, where it's like, okay, I've had that sort of dilemma where I'm like, should I limit this to 2 sentences and really 10 photos with that? But I like speaking. I feel like even like all like my dad and my grandmom in particular now are 2 people who still tell me a lot of stories, quite like almost on the daily. And so I enjoy that, and try, like even today I posted something about the rainfall passing 67 inches for the year, and those are literally numbers that my dad told me when I got off the phone with him. And so it's often what I hear, what I apply to my surroundings, But it was interesting actually, because I was traveling in Bombay last week and I met someone who had been following my page for about a year now. And they said to me that the writing comes across as a good kind of sensitive and a good kind of aware. And they were unsure at the time if you can stereotype so much, but they weren't sure if it was who was running it, a guy, a girl, young or old. And I like that. I enjoyed that because I don't think it's never been, I mean, so obviously I've got to immerse myself into it, but it's never been about me. But the stories I feel should still come across through writing. And I've sort of thought about blogs or newsletters to add as a tab on our website. But then again, it's just another additional step, which I find that maybe like right now if I can combine it of doing like, let's say, I find that stories are really good and I really enjoy telling stories in a way. There's a low pressure way. You don't have to like it. You don't have to comment. You just scroll. And so I just put a nice photo or a 15-second video with 2 lines to go with it where it's not too much reading, and then you go to the next one. And so it's a balance. I think it's ever changing. Who knows what will happen next if there's no captions allowed or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. And it's quite interesting, right? Because it reminds me of the other page that I enjoy following so much, and that's Parama, who's an apparel. Basically, she sells clothes, but then I think more than that, she sells stories, right? She's a lawyer. She was a lawyer in a past life, and now she's making these beautiful clothes, and she's just evoking such a sense of nostalgia around what it means to own some of these pieces. And I personally have absolutely no issues reading her really long format posts because they're stories of that quality and variety. But purely as a marketing engine, sometimes, who do vanity metrics help, right? I think they help the platform. So if people stay on the platform for longer, it's good for the platform because they can do more ads, but that's not really a business outcome for the people who are spending their time and effort there. So Pranoy, just being very objective, Instagram as a marketing vehicle for you, do you really see that contributing in any way? And if so, what ways do you think it benefits your business?
Honestly, 100% it's benefited our business in all our avenues in over the 4 years. Different ways as time passed. At the start, it was very much, I remember when I made the account first, it was very much literally finding people to pick up our weekly avocado harvest in the monsoon months.
Yeah.
Then as my personal journey went along, getting people to understand what happens at the grassroots or at the ground level of specialty coffee in particular in India and South India. That within itself has multiple avenues because one, we are able to get more, I would say, conscious and ecologically sort of mindful tourists come and stay. And a small change in that, which I noticed this year, which I felt really happy about, is that in general, anyway, over the last 3-4 years, we have a young, not always young, but younger crowd coming in than before, I would say because of Instagram. But also what I felt really special about was in January, I had there's a young couple who came from Gurgaon and they flew into Bangalore and they got a car and things like that. And they said, hey, we've been following you for a while. Can we come to the yard with you? But also they asked me, hey, can we borrow a pour over and a gooseneck kettle because we'd like to brew our own coffee.
Oh, wow.
It may sound like a small thing, but it's such a significant change in the mindset of people coming. Because it's someone who's been like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm in Gurgaon, but I really like my coffee. I really like my neighborhood cafe and maybe this estate. Let's look them up, or however they came across it. But then it's more like, hey, we're going to go there. I'd love to learn this. I'd love to ask you about elephants and things like that. But in general, for sure, in making sales with my produce in general, I really enjoyed that because even there, it's a fine line where I would much rather have face-to-face interactions with people where I am the producer behind the stall at a farmer's market and someone comes and chooses an avocado, asks me how to use it, asks me when it will go ripe. At the moment and in the last couple of years, it's been very virtual. But that's just how it is. I mean, it had to be virtual, at the start of COVID, and had to be very much cater to your needs at home kind of situation. So it's helped a lot, I would say. Also in the general brand recognition. You walk into a certain cafe and you're like, okay, cool. I've heard of this. I've known them. I've known that family who runs the place. I would rather, if I don't know the estates so much, I will go with that because I know that they are quite possibly doing the right things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, the avocado and smoked tofu recipe you shared last week was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really, really tasty. I wasn't expecting that. So, yeah. Pranav, you've spoken on another podcast before about why you prefer to do this exercise yourself. In the context, especially, I think of a lot of brands also choosing to outsource an exercise of this variety to agencies like the one that we run. And there are benefits and there are obviously pitfalls to both, right? In the sense that with an agency, sometimes we find that the typical ask and give is, around the number of posts or around the number of hours spent versus the number of outcomes sometimes in cases like these. So if at any point in time you had to consider probably outsourcing this, what would be maybe the one or two questions that you would ask, because you've done this, right? And you know exactly how it needs to be done. So what would be your cincher in terms of, choosing somebody else to do it? Not necessarily an agency, but maybe even a person.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
think,
point. Sorry.
I think
Go ahead, sorry.
before that, uh, even can you outsource it? Like, do you think that someone can tell this story? Because there'll be an effort involved in you telling them the story, and then unless maybe someone's like on that estate with you, or is coming by often enough. So, do you think like for something like yours, you could even potentially outsource this?
No, it's a very good question. I personally, and my journey, I think agencies work if it's very specific to the industry. And for me, it's F&B, coffee, and let's say travel. Those are the three industries that I'm a part of, or tourism as opposed to travel. And I think now the game has changed so much that more than an agency, if you have an individual with an artistic mindset of being able to communicate your brand, and if you have products, create a little story or a multifaceted means of communication of your brand, I think that goes a long way. I agree with you that you would need someone to be able to paint that whole picture, because unless you're here, or unless wherever you, let's say you're launching a beer brand, unless you're in that brewery or something like that, you wouldn't understand it fully, and it wouldn't be true, so to say. It won't be the entire essence of what you're trying to put across. But I think it's possible now, and it's something that I am considering with my sort of advisory and consultancy gigs on the side now as an individual, where I think that is a way of, because again, it's a product is one thing, a lifestyle is even one thing, but then making that appealing, making it palatable, making someone to want that, then that's a whole other ball game, And so I think it works. I don't like. I have a few friends. My friend Ria Sangi, she runs a thing called the Small Batch Company. I've seen her grow from, she used to be with Blue Tokai, with the communications and social media when I met her, and now she has a team of, I believe, 12 people, which is a pretty big team, and they're just running social media accounts and creatives for a bunch of primarily F&B, but a lot of small businesses and small to medium businesses across India. And there's immense room for that. Like, I get approached all the time for that, being like, hey, can you consult for my brand? And I often I'm like, what do you have in mind? Like, what is your first few steps? Because everyone wants a shortcut, but there isn't.
Yeah. Speaking of shortcuts, what were your early wins? Because I do understand that what growth is always a curve, and you see better results over a period of time. So in the early days, maybe the first 6 months, the first 1 year, were you even looking to the platform for some kind of validation that you were on the right path, or was it just something that you genuinely enjoyed and you kept at it for long enough and therefore it's become what it has?
I genuinely enjoyed it pretty much all the time. Like, from the time I was putting it across, and I put it across in what I thought were the layperson's terms, where it was very much easy to understand. I would say, in a way, being the first mover on the growing or the agricultural side in coffee was a great thing. Where now there's hundreds of people doing it, to be honest, and hundreds of accounts. And don't get me wrong, that's actually very beneficial for everyone. We need to, and
Yeah.
especially when you're growing these things and you are trying to build a culture of consumption of a beverage, you need people to know more about it. It's up to you to tell your story about your family, your land, your history, and each is different, But I think the small wins were able to sort of occupy that niche and tell this story, which again has really blown my mind. And then find people who are also fascinated by it. And a lot of it actually came from my friends saying, hey, that's a cool story, you should tell people. Or hey, that's a
Oh, wow.
really cool, whatever, a cabin you have, you should take really nice photos. And I'm like, okay, I trust your judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's aspirational for those of us who are seeing it from the outside, so to speak. So we want the inside scoop.
Yeah.
But like we've seen with the podcast as well, I think it's just sometimes belief trumps everything else, and you just have to believe in it for long enough. And yeah.
I agree. And it's easy to get caught up in the numbers game. Then, hey, I've only got 50 likes on this. Hey.
Yeah.
But and I've been stuck on these many followers, which, don't get me wrong, I've had these thoughts for months and months on end, when I'm like, am I growing, so to say, numerically? And but then I don't know, it comes with that sort of, I guess, experience of being able to be like, hey, you know what, I've gripped this really engaged group of people who want to be aware. It's not want to buy something or anything like that. And it's I have this sort of, I don't know anything about like marketing in that sense, and it's just been very much like, I don't know, like being street smart, I guess, in a sense, as opposed to being book smart about it. And but my friend of mine, Dia, told me maybe 2 years ago now, and it's a phrase that really sticks in my head, is you don't sell the sausage, you sell the sizzle. And so you're selling the story behind it. You're not selling the product, and that's what it is.
Beautiful. And I think street smart is the best kind of smart there is in any case. And it's clearly working for you. So why not? We wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the collaborations and partnerships that you take up, because you've collaborated with pastry chefs. And then, of course, there's the Blue Tokai part of things, which is, a lot of people at some point, if you're doing good work on the coffee growing side, you can be part of the Blue Tokai ecosystem. But not a lot of people get to take their Instagram account over and do the series of stories that you did. So did these partnerships evolve as a result of Instagram, or was Instagram just the vehicle where they panned out? Did you know the people? So my question to you really is, are you building these relationships outside of digital media and then they're translating to an online platform? Or is it the other way around? Are you meeting people because of Instagram?
I would say both, but more now it's more offline. And I've realized the value of being a business person, of meeting the person, even if not face to face, just having a Zoom call and being like, are we aligned across the board? And then, okay, cool. What's next? Do we meet each other's sort of expectations with whatever produce or product it might be? But a lot of them, I must admit, when I first started out, I was kind of cheeky about it, where there was a WhatsApp group, I remember, called the Coffee Brewers Club, India CBC. And it was just 100 people back then. And I was just put on it by a friend who, and again, back then I was 25 and really didn't really know much about coffee. And but I was like, hey, let's just see what's out there. And I just remember spending nights on end being like, okay, who is running Blue Tokai, who's running Subco, who's running all the big names, Corridor 7, and figuring it out. And funnily enough, a lot of people I've met is because I just went to their Instagram page and I liked all their photos. And then they must have been like, who is this liking my photos? And they looked at it and they found it engaging, so they liked it. And a few of them started off that way, and we're actually very good friends now. So I'm all about that, even in like personally and professionally. Like, I feel like the virtual world is one that you have to I don't know about the metaverse and things, but like things where it's yourself. You have to tread lightly, of course, and be I guess, wary about things, of things, but there's some great relationships, friendships that I've made through the virtual world, through social media in particular. And so, but also solidified real life interactions and been like, hey, you know what, we can take this to the next level and document it or share it publicly now.
Speaking of next level, like, what are you thinking? What comes next? Like, and how do you see it? Like, is it going to be that steady organic growth, and that's what we should think about for businesses like this, or small businesses, or are you always trying to think of that one thing which could make it exponential and it could just kind of skyrocket and hit everywhere?
Yeah, to be very honest, I feel like I'm on the cusp of taking things to a huge level. How I do that is entirely up to me. I think there's a few ways where I can sort of channel these avenues, but also at the same time, now honestly, I'm having a bit more fun with it. Now that I'm like a little less emotionally attached to social media. I like genuinely now, if just say tomorrow morning we got an email and said your Instagram is no longer an app, I wouldn't feel it'll suck because a lot of your work is gone on that, but like I don't think I'd feel that bad because there's a bit of a realization where I was like, okay, cool. What I do is very much people resonated with it at home or in a cafe or in a chef's kitchen or something like that. But coming back to your question, I think, yeah, it's wanting to. I think I've always wanted to sort of do something that has never been done before, but also do something that has been done before, but differently. I feel like that's the beauty of agriculture in general, where I've always described it as a combination of, or at least Kerry Haklu, the combination of traditional and modern practices. And so I think there's always room, there's a bit of wiggle room there for yourself to be like, hey, you know what do people want? What can I tell? What can I sort of show? And then you have to sort of organize that sort of the drop, so to say.
So in a way, the story takes first priority always, and everything else is just basically secondary. Sure. Quite interesting because I think we all do fall into the numerical traps. We all do have these moments when we have no idea whether what we're doing is working or whether it's not. But what you've really, I think, shown us today is that the right way to go about it is the other way around, and to just focus on having fun and put good stuff out there and believe that things will work out, because I think that's what people do resonate with eventually.
I think on that note, we undervalue word of mouth nowadays.
So true.
We really don't.
So true.
But the amount of people I've met who said, hey, my friend told me about your account and I've been following you for 2 years. We forget about that. It's huge, where it's like, especially like anything else. If you're going on a holiday and you want a friend's recommendation about where to eat or stay or whatever it might be, you will take their word for it, and just say a coffee buff or a foodie who loves avocados, and someone's like, hey, you really like this account. You will like that account most likely, or you at least check it out and you'll make that decision for yourself. And so more than it popping up on a hashtag or a suggested post or something like that, it's often sent to your inbox or physically told to you in person or something like that. And so that is something where it's we can't account for it or quantify it, but it's an immeasurable sort of tool.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it is quite a force to reckon with, and all of us are also thinking and acting a little differently, right? Like we genuinely seek out these stories and referrals from our friends, and we look at opportunities to try something new or support a small business or support a new brand. And I think we're all very conscious that it makes a difference. Today, if she goes to a small little bookstore and finds a nice collection, she'll put it out there. 4 of us will see it, and we will also go there. And we're very conscious that it does help.
Exactly.
Yeah. And a lot of that will not show up in your attribution. It will not show up in your platform metrics, but the fact is that it's happening nevertheless. Yeah.
Agreed.
What we have now is a segment that we call Topical. Topical is also a cat, not this one though. So the idea is to just keep it, a bit lighthearted towards the end. Just give people something to maybe chuckle about, maybe not. So you get on with it.
And now it's time for the much awaited Topical.
So the first question, Pranoy, is if you were handed a ton of coffee today and you were told that you have to sell all of it by next month and use only Instagram, what would you do?
Oof, so roasted coffee, if it was, I would really try first and foremost to find out every single detail about where it's grown, how it's grown, who it's grown by, how old it is, what varietal it is, when those plants were grown, how many, everything, an Excel sheet with all the details. I would ask for a sample myself, roast them very different ways, what we call cupping or a sensorial analysis of it. And then start a marketing plan where it is, if it is, it's just say a quality of a pretty good standard, you have to look at the bigger boys, and that would be like sort of B2B. So like cafes would power through a lot of coffee on the week. And so, but otherwise also using Instagram in this case, it would have to be what I still find a big gap in the B2C world, which I'm not fully tapping into as yet. I don't really, it's not a priority, but also bandwidth wise, not ready for at the moment. But the retail B2C side is something that is dying for, I would say, new faces and new names of sort of increasing capacities.
Wow. You know what I like the most here is that you didn't seem shocked at the quantity or the scale of the challenge. You just said, let me solve this problem now.
I've been there.
As I was watching his face, I was thinking that I think we should have aimed much higher.
I know, like maybe 50 tons or 100 tons. I don't know.
To give you context as well, like when COVID, like when people don't realize that when I first jumped into the specialty coffee journey in November 2019, at the end of the season was Feb 2020, so it goes from November to Feb, and that's when COVID happened, and we had, I think, 14 tons of coffee that I had processed and promised my dad that I would sell, sitting in this go down, which I would walk past every single day. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I'm committed to this. And so by all kinds of means, I had to like pull rabbits out of the hat to get that coffee out. And so I've been.
So it's not that big a shock, really.
Yeah, I've been in the deep end.
Okay. So the next one is, who's probably the one Instagrammer that you would want to see drinking your coffee or maybe eating your produce and just tagging you? Who's that one person who you really, really wish tries your produce?
Probably sports people. I really like, I think what I do and what I sort of I'm really proud of is that what we produce, whether it's food or coffee, is very much a part of a healthy diet. And it's very much something that top level athletes can enjoy. And so I watch a lot of football. Actually, in India, probably I would say maybe Sunil Chetri, captain of the Indian football team. I'd love for him to try my avocados. And I think it can be a really beneficial bit of diets of top level athletes. But a number of footballers and maybe even golfers in the UK and Australia, I think would be a dream. And maybe I should start working on this.
Amazing.
How many types of coffee have you tasted, and is there one which is out there somewhere which is still on your list?
I've tasted decent amount. There's still a lot that I haven't tried. I really like in coffee we describe them as different origins, so where the coffee is from. And so I really, this year I'm actually going to New York next month, where someone who I work with works with producers in Burundi in Africa. And so I'm really keen to try coffee from Burundi. And in my head, not only does it help my palate get more exposed and understand what's out there, but also it's always amazing to see small countries with not so much infrastructure and very few thousand people do amazing things like this. And so I would say Burundi, but also some of the South American countries like Ecuador and Colombia. There's a lot I haven't tried as yet.
Lots to look forward to. Travels and coffee.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that actually brings us to the end of this segment. We hope you had fun, and also the end of the podcast as such. Thank you so much, Pranoy. This was actually fun, and we'd been looking forward to this so much.
Yeah.
Because we'd made up our minds. We said we want to talk to someone who's been out there and who's done this before, and I think that's exactly what we got from this conversation. Thank you so much.
No, thank you both. Thank you both for having me. And it's interesting because never before have I thought about it as sort of a talk about marketing in that sense.
Yeah. In fact, I remember you said that on our scoping call as well.
Yeah,
I never thought of this as a marketing exercise, which I think more of us could really benefit from.
But no, I'm really glad to have spoken about it, and I really hope genuinely for all of us in India as a whole, we can grow so much if we just be proud about our stories and our backgrounds and told people about them.
So true. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Pleasure to be here.
That was really, really worth it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in our networks just need to hear this, that you've got a business and you have to be out there in some shape or form, and you pick one and you be genuine and you stick with it, and you do what feels right for you, and don't fall into these kind of traps that are changing daily. So just be you and stick with it. I think if what you're selling, if it's truly got a market fit, I think it'll find its audience.
Yeah. Eventually you will find your tribe, I think. So we also discussed this last week, wherein we said we enjoy doing the podcast. So let's just sign away from all the metrics for a while, because all they're doing is causing us a certain amount of anxiety in terms of, who's listening to me. But the fact is that people are, and, that's reassuring in and of itself. And I think also it's exactly what you said, right? Because it doesn't feel right to us sometimes, but we still push through. And that's where that whole discomfort of wanting results too quickly also happens. Because if we knew that we were doing the right thing, then I don't think that question of time would really come into the picture at all. And I think a good reminder, very sobering reminder for all of us, to just not focus on the numbers, such as followers, especially so much, because a lot of the network effects are happening in places that we don't really see, even on digital platforms.
Yeah. I think really, truly don't look at the follower count, but just really nurture those who truly come, enjoy your product or service, and talk about it, and let that tribe grow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Damn Good Marketing Podcast, where we finally discussed Instagram with the person who's been there, done that, and who knows a thing or 10 things about how to make it on Instagram while also having fun along the way. Links to every single example mentioned, including Kere Haklu's Instagram page, are in the show notes. And of course, we are on LinkedIn. We are just waiting for you to ask the questions so that we can answer them and have some fun together. Let's not forget the fun part, guys.
Your cat did a lot of that jumping around.
Oh, damn. Yes. A damn good cat.
Yes. See you, folks.